Uh, my name is Dorit, and I'm the head of a Renewable Energy Initiative. I will share the screen and your permission, and you will see what I'm talking about. So, what is Eilat Lot? We are sitting in the southern part of Israel, the remotest place in Israel, and the local leaders always are looking for anchors for catalyst development. And in 2004, I suggested that the renewable energy can be one of the catalysts for regional development here in the Arava and Eilat. Why? Because our region is a desert region. We have abundant sun all year long. We have a lot of land available. Also, we have to be very careful using this land, but we have land, we have sun, we have agriculture dates because we have sun and underground water. And we have Eilat is a tourist city because we have sun and the sea, and renewable energy because we have sun and a lot of land that we can use. So this was 14 years ago, 14 or 15 years ago, when we looked at the renewable energy as an option for local industry or local economy. It will be much right to say. And we built an initiative that's called Eilat Renewable Energy Initiative, and we have 15 owners, 14 owners. All the settlements here are owners of this company. Some industrial entities here in the region are part of the owners. A technology incubator that I will talk about it in a minute, and some donators. And they all with one interest, the region. The region is the interest. There were a lot of companies, commercial companies, that wanted to be one of the owners of this company, and we said no. The owners would be only the local people that want, and the interest would be to develop this region. So we are a non-benefit company. That means there's no dividends at the end of the year, and all the income and all the money we have goes straight back to implement our goals in the region. So this is this is the company, and what this company does. This company, first of all, we see the clean energy as a catalyst for regional development. So the first thing we should do is to produce clean energy. So we have here 190 megawatts installed. And we are producing 150% of the energy demand used daytime in the region. The region is very big by land, but considered to be very small by population. We are only 65 or 70 million people here in the region, but because it's the main tourist town in Israel, in the weekends, in the summer, we are doubling the population with the hotel rooms. So we are producing right now, the main industry in the region is air conditioning. It's mainly in daytime. So we are producing the whole energy needed in daytime. We are producing it with all kinds of economy models or business models with the local people, from local partnerships that the investors and the local settlements are sharing 50% of the facility, 70, 30%, 80, 20%. It depends on the business model they did. A lot of knowledge partnership. That means we bring the knowledge and then they bring the equity. and together we are building a solar field. Self-offsetting beyond the meter, that means you can produce for yourself all the energy needed. And of course, we are going into microgrid. This is the latest project we are doing, and global partnership. That means that the kibbutz or the settlement or the entity make partnership with the investors in the highest level, not only in the project, also in the company, the mother company backup. So this models brought to the region around 80 million, $30 million per year. And it's significant changing the situation here in the region. The next step, and you see in the picture in the down left side, the next step would be storage. And storage is the biggest challenge we're having now. So we could produce 100% energy demand from clean energy day and night. The storage, we have all kind of storage technologies, very unique, not only batteries. And I think that in 2025, we will reach 100% renewable energy day and night time. In the storage business models, we are doing the same as we did in the solar business model, that we make equities, we put everybody as partners. We are not selling only the land that we have. So we have solar fields between 1 kilowatt installed to the biggest solar field here of 60 megawatts installed. Together, everything is 190 megawatts installed. Of course, we are using rooftop as much as we can, because even though we have a lot of land, we don't want to use a lot of land and leave open spaces all over. The second pillar in our strategy would be innovation, because renewable energy goes straight with the innovation. So we have to innovate all the time and bring new technologies that can allow us to reduce our gas emissions to the atmosphere in an economic way. So what we did, there is an Israeli system with the government in other fields of knowledge to build incubators. Incubators, that means to bring investors, that the government would be 50% investing together with the investors. That means the government reducing the risk of the investors to get into innovation. Once the technology succeeds, so government knows to take back the dividends she must take about the loan she gave. If the technology do not succeed, that means it's gone. You're not owing the government nothing. So this is how you reduce your risk while investing in innovation, because in innovation, not everything succeeds. Almost everything do not succeed. There is a very small percentage of success. So we have an incubator, we have an incubator called Capital Nature. We have around 16 companies in our portfolio. 5 of them became one of the 5 biggest companies in the market stock exchange in Israel, in Israel. And maybe I'll show you a short movie, and he will. I cannot do that. Sorry. Never mind. And in these companies, all the kibbutzim around are partners. So they're enjoying this venture capital and the benefits and profits. And the system was that each company that wants to have this 2.5 million shekels, that it's $800,000 around, that you can get from this incubator, you should come here to the southern part of Israel and operate your startup from here. Another thing we developed another company called Kalot. It means Kenya in Africa, and this region, Kalot. And this Kalot company is the company that brings innovation to the developing world, where they're not connected to the grid, not to the gas or a gas pipeline or water pipelines or of course electricity grid. And we bring the technologies that can skip the need of infrastructures, national infrastructure. That means if you have, if you want to cook in those countries and most of Africa, by the way, 2% of the gas emissions to the atmosphere comes from cooking on open fire. So we are bringing a technology called home biogas, never mind what its name is right now, that brings from biogas, bioorganic waste that they have in their house, they can produce 3 to 5 hours of gas cooking and replace the charcoal's use. And we are bringing, of course, solar panels and storage, and we are bringing facilities for clean the water, filtering the water, and heating water, and fertilizers for their agricultures. Everything we are bringing with off-grid technology. And the main issue is we have a developing center here in the Arava. And the main issue is that we are very unique in our finance model. By that, the taking the microfinance model and implementing with those farmers that cannot have the money upfront to buy those technologies. We make MOUs with the banks, 5 big banks in Africa, and they are giving the loans for those farmers with the guarantee needed. So we are operating here and R&D that brings all the know-how to Africa and knows to sell it. So these are pictures. Look, this presentation, by the way, is on our website. That means afterwards, who wants to get in, I will send the link to Abigail. She will send you, or I will write the link here in the chat, and you can go into this presentation and press see all the movies that are part of this presentation that I'm skipping now because lack of time. The other pillar, we have around 8 pillars in our company. The third pillar is research and academy. So we took the local academies entities that are here in the RFI and brought them and opened a renewable energy department. So in the RFI Institute, we have a renewable energy department. We have in the R&D agriculture now a renewable department. We have in our R&D another group of R&D. We have the energy department, and we have collaboration with Arizona or other universities all over the world, bringing opportunities of research in academy regarding clean technology, renewable energy. We operate a hub. This is our hub, a very nice building that we renovated. Part of fourth pillar is our training center. We have training programs for Israel and abroad. First of all, we are bringing all the innovation and the state of mind of climate change to the local schools here in Eilat and in Arava. We having the hackathon, an international hackathon of energy, that everything that is international now is in hold, of course, but bringing youth, excellent youth from all over the world, trying to figure out and pick solutions for all kind of challenges we are giving them to climate change. We work with the academies in Israel. All the students from many academies in Israel come for a week training here in our place, learning. We have certain syllabuses that bringing the idea of how to use, how to look at the world that is changing and what are our tools to try to help solving the problems, engineers, economists, influencers, and all kind of other environmental studies and other field of interest in the academy that are covering policy and so on. Another, we are bringing teachers from all over Israel, and they're having experiencing our technologies and our ecosystem. And after the experiences, they're taking the knowledge and bringing to their schools. We're working with the local municipalities organization in Israel, the Ministry of Energy, and helping local municipalities to build their strategy, how to bring innovation and clean technologies to the local authority, each authority with her characteristics. We are dealing a lot with green building, having, all right, 5 Horizons projects in Eilat. Each project is $500,000. We are bringing everything called smart green cities. We're having a school, a green school, a new one that we built that is off connected to the grid. You can see the movie afterwards, but all the movie, part of the movies are in Hebrew, part of them are in English. So sorry, this is the situation. Because we understood that in one hand we have to produce clean energy, but in the second hand we have to reduce the demand of energy, because we are looking at the economy as a circle economy. It's very important to think circle economy, that everything we produce, we use back, and we reduce our consumption. It's very, very important. It's a tourism area here, so we took all the local settlements that have all kind of mud building and all kind of very romantic way of life, and getting them into a program of ecotourism and bringing the renewable energy facilities. And when groups are coming here and want to admire or to be very impressed from new knowledge they have, so this ecotourism can bring them. So we are updating all the sites and all the guides, tourism guides, with all the knowledge they needed about renewable energy and so on. We are branding ourselves. We have the international conference each 2 years. Now it will be December after 3 years because of COVID. And of course, it won't be so international this year. But the ecosystem of the Israeli climate tech and the renewable energy is so big. So we are having already around 800 participants coming, all government executives, all entrepreneurs, all the companies, all the innovators, all the funders, investors. Everybody is mingling for 2 days, learning and exploring new opportunities for a new industry. We also want the bit of, in Israel there is special communities, 10 communities of knowledge that promotes innovation. So we want the energy community dealing with innovation in energy, and we are working a lot to promote this innovation. Working a lot around regulation, because it's new era of knowledge, and the old market of energy is very concentrated in big companies, utilities, governments companies, and if you want to spread and the energy production. So we need to change all the regulation needed. Very fundamental, very hard to do. Step by step, bringing the leaders to understand that the change is needed. So we'll have more opportunities to open for distributed energy production. We are working a lot about activism, because in the same hand that the government ministers are asking us and declaring that they want to go to renewable energy, to change to renewable energy, and we have a goal of 30% renewable energy by 2030. But in the same time, they're still approving all kinds of businesses and agreements with old fuels and hazardous fuels like gas, of course, and petroleum. And we have to activate, we have a lot of projects that we have to stop, in the same time that we are promoting the new clean energy. This presentation is being presented online. That means we have a very, very rich website where you can find everything and a lot of knowledge. We have a huge database there with articles, you can get it. And you can be part of our newsletter that is delivered each quarterly. And this is, look, this is the whole ecosystem. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pillars that our company is dealing with. And when you're looking at all those pillars, you see one common thing. It's bringing the renewable energy with all its aspects to be a catalyst for regional development, using the local pillars that already existed before. So we are not a big company. We are a very small company. We are 6 people maximum. But we have here around 130 people working in those each circles under their organization. So we are strengthening the organization that can give all the answers for all the pillars. And when needed, we are building new organizations or companies. So this way we can have an ecosystem with a lot of people, a lot of fields of interest, and a hub where the knowledge is and the entrepreneurship is, and can give inspiration and help to all the organizations. Of course, that in the financial model, we are looking at things that in each success project, we have percentages, small percentages, but those small percentages makes a sustainable economy model for the company. And of course, we are giving all kinds of bringing money from governments and local authorities, but even though the local authority would not give money, still we built ourselves very sustained in the economic model. So this is my story. If you have questions, I would be very happy to answer. And if there is a specific field that you want to learn about, please ask, and I can explain.
Hi, everybody. Just reminding you that these are interactive sessions. Please feel free to learn from your lecturers, ask questions, give comments about what's going on in your own countries. Go ahead. Katrina, you have your hand up.
Добрый день, скажите, меня слышно?
Good afternoon, can you hear me?
Dorit, can you hear her in English?
I know, I'm not hearing her.
Dorit, hello, can you hear the English translation?
I can
Have you
hear
chosen?
Dorit. Dorit, can you go to the English channel?
What I need to do?
No, Dorit has to go to the English channel.
The English channel?
I'm in the English
Okay,
channel.
I understand. Смотрите, вот вы
Dorit,
говорите...
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Dorit, can you hear the
Dorit?
translator? Go to the
Я
bottom of your
правильно
screen
делаю?
to the interpretation and press English.
Я выбрала английский.
Just a second. Sorry.
Dorit, can you hear me now?
Hold on, Veronica.
Okay.
Perhaps I can try to speak in English, but it will be a mistake.
Hold on, Dorit, are you in the English
Wait,
channel?
I have another problem here. It's not your
Dorit, can you hear me now?
No, Veronica, she can't hear you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Wait. Sorry. No, I have a problem because I'm working with the computer, but I'm.
Okay, I will try to ask the question in English, but it can be with some mistakes, so I'm sorry earlier. So you have mentioned about financing with the government and local budgets, yes? And in how it happens? So
What do you mean how it happens?
Do you want to, Katrina, do you want to say in Russian and I can hear Veronica?
No, here, I have the English
Oh, you
one.
have the English now? Okay, great. So you can ask in Russian and Veronica will translate.
Я хочу уточнить вопрос.
So, Dorit, I would like to ask you about the funding and financing. You mentioned that there is certain governmental funding and funding from local municipalities. How is this system based? How is it structured?
Sorry, I put it in English.
You didn't hear Veronica? Dorit.
But Veronica, and I'm in English.
So you heard the English translation.
Again, try again.
Dorit, can you hear me now? Hello, Dorit. Sound check. Dorit, can you hear me?
I'm hearing the Russian even though I'm on English.
But can you hear English somewhere in between? Obviously not.
No. Okay. So the question, sorry, I heard Veronica. Maybe I'll repeat the question. Dorit, you can hear me, Nachon?
Okay.
Yes, okay. So what is the structure for getting funding from the government and from the local municipalities? How does the process work?
Because we are in a non-government organization. So in Israel, there is a way that if you are a non-government organization, you can ask for support for the local municipalities because they already accepted and agreed that our goals are the goals of the local municipality. That means they want a regional development depending on renewable energy, and we are the organization that access those goals. This is why we can have supporting from the government and from the local government, and from the central government we are competing bids, and the bids also you should be a non-organization profit.
Dorit, something happened to your microphone.
If you're a business organization, you could not have those funds. This is why I explained that if you want to make business and have revenues to the company, we are doing that with other companies that we are building, and we are till 10% of those companies. So we are bringing revenues from other companies we are building that we are 10% of them. And here we are a non-benefit company that can go compete governmental bids and get supported from the local government.
Thank you, Dorit. Ekaterina, did that make sense? Did that answer your question? Does anybody else have any questions about any of the topics that Dorit brought up? Do you guys have examples from your countries about working with regional governmental organizations and regional development?
The participants are from authorities, from business organizations. Where are from?
I think most of the participants are working in the things like energy ministries and from the government as well, things like that. But there are some people who work in different businesses. But I see that Luca has a question. Luca?
Yes, hello. I have a question regarding net metering. Is net metering applicable to the project you mentioned? Or is there something?
Net metering is applicable in each beyond the meters. So if we have settlements here, or we have houses, or we have industry zones, or we have industries, I don't know the regulation in your country, but in our country, the regulation gives the opportunity beyond the meter to make a net metering project. And also we had a national net metering program where you can produce for yourself, and the leftovers of electricity goes into the grid, and you can buy from the grid what you needed when you needed, with a special tariff. But right now, the solar energy production in Israel is so cheap because we have a lot of sun, and the prices of panels, of course, dropped tremendously from China. So we don't need to give special tariffs. So it is the best to produce or for yourself, or even store for yourself the energy and give it for nighttime, use it in nighttime, or just sell it to the grid. But look, the right thing to do is, of course, to produce to yourself. That if I'm a visionary right now, I would see that the whole houses would produce from themselves with a small storage, and maybe the tariff would be for the storage and not for the production. I don't know the hours of sun you have, the radiation you have. I don't know the price of a kilowatt installed in your country. But here in Israel, for sure, we have a lot of sun, and the price is very low. We are speaking about 6 American cents per kilowatt installed solar. This is tremendously cheap, and this why it would be fantastic that each house will have its own circle closed, and of course neighborhoods and townships, and everything would be controlled by microgrid. We needed all kind of leftovers, and where it's needed, and where you have much more electricity that you produce, so you stand between buyers. But right now, it's not like this. And right now, most of the electricity we are producing by solar, we are sending to the national. We are selling to the electricity.
Thank you.
Sosa? Sosa, you have a question?
Yes, I want to say just an example from my country. In Georgia, we have still developing this practice to communication between non-government organizations and the renewable energy releasing projects. So I think the big part of our communication between non-government organizations and government organizations takes the communication about non-releasing projects, and this is still very dangerous, and this not help to releasing renewable energy projects. Sometimes I think we need and we must have a practice to developing renewable energy projects together with government organizations and together with non-government organizations. I think this is a big practice and a good idea what you say in your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Magdalena? I forgot to remind everybody, when you ask a question, please please present from what country you're from also. Magdalena, you're muted.
I'm sorry. This is Magdalena from Ministry of Economy of North Macedonia. I have a question regarding the part of the innovation. I think that you have mentioned the pillar for innovation, where you said that when there is an innovation project that applies for financial support, the government can participate with up to 50% of the cost of the innovation. And if the innovation fails, then nothing happens with these assets that the government has provided. But if it succeeds, then the government gets a certain part of the revenue, I guess, of the innovation. How is this structured? Is it some kind of program on an annual basis, or are these funds limited? So who has the ability to ask for such kind of support? How is it structured?
We have an innovation authority in Israel. Innovation authority is divided to 10 or 12 subjects. One of them is energy, and you have the internet, and you have the biochemistry, and you have a lot of fields of industry. And this innovation authority makes call for proposal for groups of investors to be incubators. So first of all, look, the Innovation Authority has thousands of programs. I'm speaking about the program I showed you here, okay? There is no only one program. So what the Innovation Authority does, said, okay, I want group of investors that will show me an ability of running running an incubator. I can give them $60 million, $20 million, $10 million, $15 million for 5 years. And this incubator, when he completed the bid, should bring the investors that would put the other 50%. If the government put 50 million, the investor should bring 50. And of course, there is a committee that checks all the ability for this incubator to operate. And this incubator should look for the investors, for the startups, should look for the seed startups in the universities, around researchers, and they should look and dig the best technologies. Most of the investors are coming from the industry, so they have CTOs, very profession CTOs, chief technology officers. So there is a committee of chief technology officers in each incubator that decides in the end which technology will get the support. I can tell you that in our incubator, we had more than 2,000 ideas applying, and we submitted only 16. Because you have, if you want really to succeed and not to lose the money, you check it very, very, very carefully. And afterward, after the CTOs decided about the technology, it goes to the innovation ministry. So they have another committee that reapprove the CTO's decision. So this is the main important part in those incubators, to choose the right startups. And then afterwards, when the startups start working, after he finished the 2.5 years that he has, the incubator helps him to bring new investors to the market. So you have a death valley, a huge death valley from the day you start your idea till it's a company. And this incubator should lead you and go with you all the stages, helping you with the government in one hand and with the private sector in the other. And what happened in our particular story, that 5 companies raised their equity and the money from the stock exchange market. So this where the big money comes. And now after 7 years, the government phased out, and this incubator became a VC, a venture capital with a lot of private money that can continue and invest, continue and invest. This is what the government tries to do, to in the same time to help the startups, but in the same time to build the ecosystem that afterwards the private ecosystem would continue help the startup, because the government wants to phase out all the time and go to the next new thing.
Thank you, Dorit. Does anybody else have any questions? Does it work differently in your governments? So?
Yes, I want to say again about my country. In Georgia, of course, we have some mechanisms, some government mechanisms, some organizations that help to develop small businesses and help them to releasing it, like your system that you mentioned about. But this practice is not enough. Enough old, because we are still under developing this system. For example, there is an organization under government. It's called Enterprise Georgia, that helps organizations and businesses that are enterprising their products in Georgia. It is the first, and I think it's the best practice in my country. Also, we have many new ideas about releasing new projects, about startups in young community. In universities, people often interesting about at the last time, people often interesting about releasing renewable energy projects. I am still master's degree student, and around me there are many students that want to release their own ideas, and sometimes they need communication between organizations that can help about releasing their projects and be for them like incubators and helps them. I think it will be good practice, and it will be interesting that the organizations you mentioned above can have some communication with them and give some information trainings about how can this system work and how can this system develop to make this kind of businesses more interesting and develop this strong system supporting businesses and other organizations, of course, in field of renewable energy projects and also in many other kinds of businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Saso.
Thank you.
Dorit just put the link to the presentation she gave in the chat. I'll remind everybody that I created the Google Drive, and I already uploaded the link as well to the Google Drive under the folder for presentations. So Tarek's presentation is there as well, and also Suleiman's from the very first day, and now Dorit's presentation is also there. Luca, you have something to say as well?
Yes, I just wanted to add something about what Soso said. We also have an innovation agency in Georgia that finances some research projects in renewable energy. And also there are some projects with direct funding from the government and municipalities, especially. For example, I saw a Covenant of Mayors logo under the initiative. We also had some renovation works in renewable energy in Eastern Georgia as well.
I saw in the chat question that doesn't that means that the states involved for limited period of time in the incubator? As I said, yes. And then they ask, and what documents define the time of participation of the state for each project? So as I said before, the states do not participate in each project. They participate in the incubator that they build, and they give a period of 5 years time. We get an extension to 7 years, but each project in this time should get only 2.5 years. And 2.5 till 3 years, this is the limited time we're giving to each project to prove itself to the next step.
Thank you, Dorit. We have time for 1 or 2 last questions or comments. Anybody? Okay, so thank you very much, Dorit.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks. We will take a few minutes break, and at 11 o'clock Israel time, so whatever on the hour it is, wherever you are, we'll come back to hear from Naama Teschner about energy poverty. Thank you very much, Dorit.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And see you all in about 5 minutes. Welcome, everybody. After your break, we're here with Dr. Naama Teschner. After we had the lecture now with Dorit, we're now going to learn a bit about energy poverty. So Naama, please.
Hi, okay, so hello everybody. It is a misfortune that I cannot see you all here in Israel face to face, but I am excited and happy to have the opportunity to speak with you about this really what I think is a very important topic, which might be a bit less common to talk about, and although I'm sure many of you can relate to this specific dimension of energy policy, it might not be at the core of your activities in day-to-day practice, and I hope this will add new information, a new perspective on the overall issue that you are all interested in. And I will, of course, also relate it to renewable energy and to the current to your current interests. So my name is Naama, Dr. Naama Teschner. I'm a lecturer at Ben Gurion University of the Negev in Beersheba at the Department of Geography. We recently opened also a school for sustainability and climate change, and I'm part of this school as well in the management board. You are very welcome to interrupt during the presentation. Please stop me whenever you have a question, whenever you want to share some of your knowledge. I will be more than happy to learn more about also you, the context, where you're coming from, and what is your interest specifically in the topic that I'm going to introduce. So again, please feel comfortable to stop me. And of course, I hope we can have a few minutes at the end to have a more open discussion and again, raise any question you have. So I'm sharing now the presentation, and as Abigail said, and you also have it in your schedule, I'm going to talk about energy poverty today. So I have lots of topics, lots of titles that I wanted to go over with you. And at least these 10 topics. And Abigail, please, could you give me a notice of, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes to leave room for discussion? I don't have the clock just in front of me. Thank you.
Sure.
And I will start with a basic definition of the energy trilemma and why the energy poverty is a part of one important dimension of the energy trilemma. I will talk about definitions of what energy poverty is. I tried to collect the most up-to-date data, worldwide data on the global scale and European scale of energy poverty, and to give you a few examples of how do we measure energy poverty. I will also mention some of its impacts, its socioeconomic and mainly health-related impact. And we'll talk with you about why this phenomena, challenge, problem, difficulty is going to get even worse with the climate crisis and the global temperature changes. We'll then mention a few examples of policies and regulation to address energy poverty around the world. And I hope to have the opportunity and the time to discuss with you a specific case study of a community that suffers from energy poverty on a very heavy and large scale, and unfortunately from Israel. Here in Israel, a community, a population that if you didn't hear about yet, I am sure you will hear during this course more about. And as I promised, also to discuss with you the connection between energy poverty and renewable energy, and to finish with some open questions for discussion. So what is the energy trilemma? So I will start maybe in the beginning with sustainable development goals, the goals of the United Nations, which were adopted in 2015. This was a universal call of action to end poverty, to protect the planet, to promote peace and prosperity for all. And inside these 17 SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, number 7 is directed at energy, and it says ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. And of course, we know that energy is not a standing alone topic, and energy is linked to every other critical of achieving these sustainable development goals. It It relates to health, to education, to food security, gender equality, poverty reduction, employment, and climate change, of course. And we will discuss some of these issues a bit later. And in order to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 7, one of the understanding of the thoughts of how do we understand energy systems was developed by the World Energy Council. And this is what is called this Energy Trilemma. You can see here, the Energy Trilemma is what should be sustainable energy systems. It's composed of 3 dimensions: energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. And there is a set of indicators according to which all countries in the world are ranked by their performance to guide policy, to support decision-making. Set of indicators that will determine how much the energy system of the country is sustainable. And let's have a very, very quick look at each of these dimensions. So energy security reflects the nation's capacity to meet current and future energy demand and to cope with crises or shocks, such as earthquake, such as a natural disaster, flooding, without disturbing the energy supply. Energy sustainability is, of course, refers to the ability of the national energy system to become less polluting, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, etc. And energy equity, which this is where I'm going to concentrate the talk today, refers to the ability to provide access to affordable and available energy for all domestic, commercial, and industrial users living, and this is of course a quote, and no person behind. Of course, the problem is achieving all of these 3 dimensions together, and this is why it's called the Energy Trilemma, because usually when we try to promote one dimension, it often comes on the expense of another pillar or another dimension. Increasing security, for example, might come on the expense of the price of electricity. And today we will indeed focus on the social dimension of the trilemma and understand why the world is actually very far from achieving Sustainable Development Goal number 7. So what is energy poverty? We go right into our core topic. So the difficulty of the household, this is the definition, to secure sufficient energy for basic needs and functions such as cooking, lighting, keeping food and medicine, heating or cooling the house. When you hear that, I'm sure you probably already imagine that the difficulty, for example, to keep the house warm is a very major challenge, especially in cold weather conditions in countries where the winter is harsh. And it's true because most of the energy poverty population in the world is concentrated or many people that are considered under the conditions of energy poverty are indeed in cold weather, experiencing cold weather conditions, and this is a well-known problem for dozens, decades already, but it is now also a growing challenge in warm conditions and high temperatures as well, when people cannot cool themselves inside their home, and we will see some examples for it later. But I want to take this very basic definition and say that this is not enough to understand the complexity of the phenomena of energy poverty, because you can tell me, okay, so this is only a problem of a general poverty. It doesn't different from the difficulty of people to pay other bills such as water as well, or buying food. And I would say that we need a wider definition, because the energy system is connected to large infrastructure that goes beyond the individual household. And this is why we need to look on a bigger picture. And indeed, there is a wider definition to what energy poverty is. And it looks not only on the ability of the household to afford paying for energy, but also on the availability, reliability, acceptability, quality, and safety of both energy networks and the appliances, the electric appliances used in the home. So here you see how it connects the large infrastructure that is outside of the home and the house to consider conditions of energy poverty. And I want to add today also the perspective of which source do we use for energy. And indeed, the definition today also consider or also refer to clean energy as an indicator in asking whether a person experiences energy poverty or not. What is the source of energy that gets to his house to warm, to light, to cool his house, or to use for electricity, for appliances. I want to add a very, very important distinction here, and to say there is a very major and important crucial difference between the global south and the north south in terms of energy poverty. And these differences between developing and developed countries, their differences are in how energy poverty is defined, how it is measured, how it expressed and addressed by policies between developing and developed countries. And there is, I can say, in general, there is a dichotomy or some kind of understanding that in the global south, in developing countries, the issue is most likely the mere access to electricity and networks or to energy resources, plus the fact that many people around the world, and I will just give a few examples in the next slide, on dangerous cooking using kerosene, using wood in a way that is very dangerous to the health. And this is how energy poverty is expressed in developing countries, while in developed countries, the focus is mainly on the thermal condition of the houses and the lack of insulation, the situation of mold that requires much more energy to invest in order to cool or to warm the house. But I will get into a bit more, I want to blur a bit these definitions, because I think that today the situation is a bit more complex than to put these two situations completely opposing to each other. I think we need to think in a more complex way. And the case that I will present to you, the Bedouin population in the Negev in Israel, in the southern region of Israel, in the Negev, is a very good example to show how I'm not sure how there is such a big difference between, or sometimes we can find these differences a bit blurred. Of course, not always. And of course, in many parts of the world, this is still the situation. And indeed, just a few graphs to show you the trends. So in general, we can say that the global electricity access rates are definitely improving. We can see here from 1998, and this is of course a global scale, to 2019, from less than 74% of the world population to more than 90% of the world population have now access to electricity. But this graph is also very confusing because if we will look later or closer on specific countries, we can see that in many parts of the world, in large regions, when many people live, we are talking on less than 50% access rate to electricity, and sometimes even less than 10% of the population in some countries. And you can see here that mainly the electricity access rates are mainly low in Africa, in some of the parts of the southern Asia, and these are the main regions where the access rates are very low, which of course put these gaps very clearly. So just few numbers. This is from the UN website. So we are talking about 1/3 of the world's population that cook in dangerous and inefficient cooking systems based again on dangerous sources. We're talking about 759 million people which still lack the access to electricity. 3 out of 4 of them live in sub-Saharan Africa, as we saw in the map. And maybe the more interesting part for you is indeed looking at Europe in total, and the numbers now estimate, and I will talk later about one of the major challenges is to measure and to count and to have the data about this phenomena. But the estimation talks about that more than 50 million people in Europe alone experience energy poverty, which we talk about 1 in 4 households. And indeed, there is no data at all in most countries, even in Israel. I do not have data on energy poverty simply because nobody collect data or measure it. And there are also different ways to measure it, which makes it part of the problem also on a national scale, but also for global understanding of it and global comparison. So I brought you here, and you can have I know you have the slide, so you can look into it later if you're interested. There are different ways to measure energy poverty. So for example, one of the most common way is to calculate the total monthly expenses on energy, which is more than 10% of the household budget. If people are paying on their energy bills more than 10% of the total total of the household budget, it is considered, it put them on the danger of being the energy poor. Some definitions look or measure it through non-objective indicators such as the EU Silk, which is a European database, the only official database that collect information across in a systematic way across countries, with some problems which we are not going to get into, but they are based. The EU Silk data is based on self-assessment surveys, which means it is perception based, which means people report if they feel cold in their house, how often they cannot pay their bills, and what their experiences are from this situation. So there is pro and cons, the advantages and disadvantages to self-assessment versus some kind of a more quantitative, objective indicator. But we can say that if we combine both approach, we can get a better picture for sure. So you can see the different criteria or measurements which again make it a very problematic way to define more clearly and probably also to put policy to cope with energy policy if there is no agreeable or one measure. I wanted to just say a few words. Some of it, I'm sure, is already clear from all this long introduction that I gave you about the impacts of energy poverty. So there are two types of impacts I want to quickly mention: the socioeconomic impact and the health impact on the next slide. So in terms of socioeconomic impact, so of course we're talking about to pay the energy bills or and electricity bills. It put an economic burden on a household when there is not enough, indeed, in conditions of poverty or in low income, let's say, not even poverty, low income household, because there is the need to maybe or sometimes to choose between buying food, medicine, or paying the electricity bills. There is, of course, the rates, it influences the rate of educational access. Access to the internet today is crucial, especially when we are now talking under condition of the pandemic, of the corona, studying from home, working from home. For many people, it became impossible if they lack the access of the internet because they have problems with their electricity or paying for electricity, or to charge their computer, charge their phone, etc. So it influenced patterns of employment and employment access as well. And in general, we all know or can think or cannot imagine our life without electricity, right? I didn't even say that because it is so obvious. And all we don't need research to show that it affects the how we can participate as equal in the society, how it might involve a lack of access to electricity. It might include feelings of shame, of isolation, and of course some kind of stigma about your status. And more physical influences or impacts of energy poverty. Much research was done on the physical impact, the health, and the variety of illness and diseases that can develop in both cold and warm conditions. So there is research that showed impacts of the improper, let's say, the improper temperature can have on infants' weight gain, and of course on respiratory diseases such as asthma and etc. Mental stress, there is research that showed that as a result of the facing debt and bureaucracy, dealing with the energy companies, this leads and create a lot of mental stress and mental illness. The just ability to store the medicine without a refrigerator that you can count on, the ability to operate maybe even life-supporting equipment is put in danger. And of course, access to e-health in countries that this is available may be a problem. And in general, we also know that according to the World Health Organization, public health is a state of a physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of the disease. So if we take all these impacts together, it's easy to see how energy poverty affects our overall well-being. Okay, so few words about energy poverty in the face of climate change. So climate change already intensifies vulnerabilities and insecurities And when I talk about people under conditions of vulnerabilities and insecurities, we are talking about people with chronic illness, the elderly, the homeless, the poor, the undocumented migrants. We can add also infants and women and pregnant women. We now saw much research that showed the vulnerability of various groups to climate change, and part of the expressions of the relation between energy poverty and climate change related indeed to the changes in temperatures, in global temperatures, the storms and freezing temperatures that not only, that even if it does not disconnect people from the electricity supply, they might not able to warm enough their houses, which, as I said, cause many health problems. So we can see here that we have from North America through India to Europe, all over the world, these headlines in the newspaper about people, dozens and thousands of people that died, and these are only titles from 2021 that also report and also prospect prospect that people are going to be very badly affected from freezing temperatures and storms. And I wanted to show or remind us also that heat waves and the inability to cool yourself, cool the house, or if you are exposed while you are working outside, people in certain jobs that have to be outside all day, how dangerous this is as well. People are dying around the world from these heat waves, again, from North America, Canada, Europe, and all in all the regions around the world which experience that. And just to summarize this, I found a very recent, just now published research that that brings numbers, and these numbers were I don't think they were calculated in this way before, and they express this issue in numbers have the power. So we can see in the map the average annual excess death due to non-optimal temperatures. This is the title, and the red and the yellow spots are where the excess deaths are higher and higher than the average annual death. And we can see the numbers. So globally, we're talking about more than 5 million deaths, which are associated with non-optimal temperatures every year, accounting for 9.43% of all deaths around the world, which is, for me, was very shocking. Of all excess deaths, 49% of them occurred in Asia, which again, maybe we think or we instinctively think about Africa, but here we see that half of these deaths are in Asia. Eastern Europe had the highest heat-related excess death rate, and Sub-Saharan Africa had the highest cold-related excess death rate. So these are the tangible numbers which bring this challenge and difficulty of energy poverty to the core or to the table, very bluntly to say. And of course, I want to mention also that this is maybe not always or sometimes not only the problem of the poor or the low income or the people that live in hard conditions day to day, but also we now facing with the climate change all the disasters flooding, the fires, which cause the power cuts and disconnect people from electricity. And this is, of course, something that on a national level, on a global scale, needs to, will increase, and countries around the world are should and need to promote plans to cope with the power cuts that might become more often, that might become longer to repair, etc. And again, example from all over the world, this is not only a problem of a specific region. So if I'm talking about how do we plan or what kind of policies we put to cope with energy, let's say not only poverty, let's talk about energy insecurity maybe. So we can capture the whole type of the wider definition. So energy security policies and regulation. So we can talk on a theoretical level. Okay, we can talk about whether energy is at all a basic right. Do we need to make sure people have access to energy? And this is a theoretical, it's a legal discussion, it is maybe even a philosophical question. It has a lot of dimension. And I was looking for places, for policy, for regulation, for countries where there is some kind of acceptance that the right to energy is similar, for example, to the right of water, because we know that the right of water was already recognized as a basic right. And I couldn't really find, although there is a new directive by the European Union, the EU Electricity Directive, and please correct me if some of you know of any other specific case where there is a recognition and a practical implication for of the basic right to energy. But from what I know, the EU directive talk about energy, that energy services are fundamental to safeguarding the well-being of the union citizens, but this is only a declaration. It's a normative declaration. The specifics of how do we promise it, or you promise it, are non-binding. And a part of that, there are 31 constitutions that mention electricity, but mainly with reference to energy markets. So it mainly talks about the financial markets and not about people. And also, when I find the connection between energy and people in constitutions, it's usually in constitutions of developing countries, which might suggest that, again, this is a more declarative, normative, which has less practical implementation on the ground. I found some exceptional examples, and I will show in a minute the examples during the Corona, which are unique and interesting. But there are some countries which start to promote a more specific regulation that guarantee the access to energy. For example, in Catalonia, in Spain, and in France, you can find some things. But again, they are not in a very big and orderly law. They are more in a specific connection to, for example, housing rights or social housing. How do you guarantee that people have access in social housing to electricity? So if I want to put in a national context, I was trying again to look for these policies and regulations that so I can say in general that laws and policies mainly refer to limitations or due process of disconnections. Okay, when and why and where can the electricity companies disconnect people from electricity because they didn't pay their bills? The other measures that are in place in many countries are subsidies and support schemes for households according to different tests, mainly of income, that are given sometimes directly to pay energy bills or directly to support or to lower the price of electricity, but sometimes these are general subsidies that are given to low-income households. Another measure which is very, very debatable among social scientists is the pay-as-you-go or prepaid electricity meters. And I just mentioned the special measures during the corona, and I found interesting examples from your countries. So for example, in Kyrgyzstan, and again, these are all sources that I didn't validate it by myself. You can access this map in this website. It's a group that I'm part of. This group, a European research group. It's called INGAGER, Energy Policy Research Group, and you can find this map and this information there, and also the link to the source of the information. So I apologize in advance if there is some data that is not completely correct, but this was updated I think a year ago. So in Kyrgyzstan, for example, there was in a period there was a ban on disconnections from electricity during the pandemic. In Turkey, there was specifically in the municipality of Istanbul launched an initiative that people who applied for social support could post their water and gas bills, not electricity, but gas, to the website, and the municipality connect these people that were looking for support to pay the bills together with donations or donators. So again, I'm not sure how did it work or did it work at all, but this was the publicity around it. Another example from Ukraine, again, a ban on disconnection for non-payment was imposed by a law during or because of the corona, during the first 30 days following the termination of the measure. Which means that people could have extra time to pay their electricity bills. In Georgia, I think this is the most unique example that I found. It was labeled under the category of free access to energy, which is another very interesting debate. Should we promote the idea of free access to energy and how this can work in our current financial economic system? But what it says here, that on April 1st, the government of Georgia announced it will fully cover utility bills for those consuming less of 200 kilowatt of electricity and less than 200 cubic meters of gas. The relief will concern utility charges in this month, etc., etc. So this is a very unique where your entire bills could be paid by the government. And there are more countries on this map. You are welcome to have a look on a different kind of policy that address the specific crisis of the corona. And I don't need to repeat it. We all know, we all stayed at home. Our energy bills increases, and this was part, and people that already experience poverty in terms of energy, of course, they had to deal with even worse condition. Now I have exactly the time to briefly introduce you with a specific case that I looked on the Bedouin population in Israel, and I did very briefly because I also want to discuss about the connection with renewable energy. These are some of my co-authors, just to show I did a research with Romanian co-researchers, which was really interesting. And I also have some collaborators in the public health school in Ben Gurion, Dr. Tarek Abu Hamed, which I'm sure you, if you didn't meet yet.
They met Tarek, yeah.
So I worked with him as well. I'm on this research at University of Haifa, and I will really briefly, Abigail, did you already talk or introduce the community? I'm sure
the Bedouins, no, we haven't discussed them yet.
And I'm sure there will be some lectures that deal with, right? Or should I?
Maybe in energy policy. I'm not sure that there'll be other lectures that specifically mention the Bedouins.
Okay, so I would just say a few words because I think it's very interesting and important issue. So what you see here, it's a specific case. I will term it extreme case of energy poverty, because in most countries from you are coming from, and including Israel, the official data will show that the access rate to electricity is 100%, and I checked it. But the question is, do you know or think about people or groups of people in your countries that are not counted at all and might not have the access to the infrastructure? I'm not even talking about paying the bill, but they don't have access to infrastructure. Maybe it's a rural community somewhere. Maybe it's a nomad community. Maybe it's some ethnic minority that is not documented or undocumented in your countries. In Israel, we are talking on a very large population that, despite having this modern country and modern electricity grid, we have around 270 people in total, the Bedouin community, and half of them live in settlements which are not connected to the electricity grid at all. They are completely off grid. They don't have access to running water. They get their water from tanks. They don't have garbage collection facilities or infrastructure. Public, the health clinic our services are limited, etc. So it's a population that, despite being citizens of the country, they still live in a situation in a more traditional way. I would mention the fact that this is an ethnic minority, a Muslim ethnic minority in Israel that used to be semi-nomad across the Middle East, and after the establishment of the Israeli state, the tribes, the Bedouin tribes that stayed in the Negev region, they received the citizenship, but some of them live in again unofficial, informal villages. So on the left here, yes.
Sorry, just to let you know, there's 15 minutes left to the session.
Yeah. Thanks. I'll finish in 5, so we can have time for questions. So on the left, there is a settlement that was established by the state. There are 7 like that, but on the right, you can see a village that is unofficial and is completely off the grid. And what we're interested in is to see how is the effect of energy poverty expressed differently. We are talking about a population that lives under the poverty line, that in general is vulnerable and marginalized in the Israeli society. And part of our survey also included the sources of energy in these specifically unrecognized villages, in these off-grid villages, we're interested to understand where they do get some access to energy. And you can see that the growing trend and growing use of renewable, of solar panels and self-made battery systems that these households install, which and are considered also, like their homes, they are also considered illegal by the state. But there is but this is the situation. Some of them or most of them used to use generators on diesel, and there is a transition or a move to use more solar panels, self-installed solar panels. But still, you can see the use of generator is still the share of among our the participants in the survey. It's still a large share of the population. And I will say a few more words. So we had a survey which I will not get so much into the details. I do want to say, just to summarize the specific of what we learned from the study about energy poverty. We learned that energy poverty in this specific community is not in both types of towns, in the unofficial, unrecognized off-grid towns, but also in the towns that are connected to electricity and are recognized by the state. In both type of settlements, the issue of energy poverty is not a problem of the household. It's not considered or perceived or have a or significant only of a problem of a household or a home that cannot pay his bills or cannot have access to energy. We're talking, we found a very strong connection to a larger institutional issue, a structural issue that is related to, for example, trust in the authorities, trust in the electricity company, trust in their local leadership, about their the community understanding or feeling or perception of how they are prepared for a disaster, for example, for the next heat wave, for maybe an earthquake. All this perception was very, very low. Their perception of how they are ready for the next disaster. And we indeed saw that also during the corona, there was excess date which was higher in this community, not much higher, but we did see difficulty of the people which are already vulnerable people to cope with such shocks, or disasters. So just to summarize this, the factors influencing energy poverty here in our case are at the community and systematic level, not only a matter of individual problems, which is a bit different from what I talked with you until now. So I just promised my last 5 minutes, I will just mention the relation between energy poverty and renewable energy. So people promote the idea that renewable energy might be some kind of a solution or elevation to energy poverty. So in Israel, in the case of the local Bedouin population, off-grid solar panels are informal coping strategy. Okay, this is not a policy that comes from the state. And this is not a permanent or official solution. Everybody understands that at the end, these households will have to be connected to electricity, to the grid. The question is whether renewable energy is an intermediate solution. I think that there is many people that will argue that yes, this is a reasonable intermediate solution. But I found other examples in Belgium, France, and Germany, where, for example, people are organizing, a community is organizing as a cooperative, for example, to buy shares in wind turbine, and then because the electricity is a bit cheaper, then the people that are in low-income household can pay a bit less for their electricity bills. So there is some initiatives that connect between these renewable energy cooperative and those low-income houses. So these are the examples, and you can look into it in the presentation. So just to summarize, and then again, more than happy to discuss and hear you. Energy poverty is not a regular poverty because it depends on large-scale infrastructure, the electricity grid, the state or the state of the housing, the appliances, the state of the safety of appliances, etc. It's expected to worsen due to climate change, the growing demand for energy in our consumer life, and also coupled, of course, with population growth. We have still the question, the principal question to ask whether energy is a commodity or is it a fundamental right, and we should put our policies and all our plans to think about it and direct it toward such a decision. And finally, will renewable energy be a sustainable solution for energy poverty for off the grid populations? This is, again, maybe changes from place to place, but this is another issue that we can think of. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Naama. Does anybody have any questions? We have still a bit of time left. Yeah, Gordana.
For the first, thank you
Don't
very
forget
much
to
for your,
introduce where you're from. Yes.
yes, for your very interesting and very good presentation. I want just to say something about Serbia regarding energy poverty. 6 years ago, we adopted a decree on energy endangered buyers, and according to that decree, households have to fulfill some conditions regarding their incomes, healthy and other conditions. And when they fulfill that conditions, they gain status of energy protected buyers. At the moment, we have around 70,000 households in electricity and around 60 households in natural gas. When they gain that status, they can't be disconnected from the grid, and they gain a right on reducing their bills for electricity and natural gas.
Amazing, really, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Magdalena.
Hi, this is Magdalena from North Macedonia. Thank you for the very useful presentation, especially because we are now working on some amendments to our current legislation on vulnerable energy customers. We have, according to our energy law, have a program for vulnerable energy consumers. And under this program, a vulnerable consumer is a household which uses guaranteed minimum financial assistance according to the law on social security, and these households receive a monthly allowance to cover the part of the electricity bill. And also there is another category, and it's a person that is in a state of social risk, like motherhood, illness, old age, injury, or disability, to whom the energy supply or the right to use the grid is given under special conditions and determined by the rules of supply with a separate kind of energy. We also had this program for promotion of renewable energy and energy efficiency in households, where we have subsidized households with low incomes to buy stoves on pellets, to install solar thermal collectors for heating water, and to change their old wood windows with new PVC and aluminum windows. And we have subsidized up to 70% of the investments of these vulnerable consumers. What we are working now is to probably change this program that is for vulnerable energy consumers. But and we have a working group and working with the energy community and preparing a study. But it seems like it's kind of difficult to precisely define these categories of vulnerable energy consumers. As you have mentioned in one of your slides, we need to focus more on the criteria on how to measure the indicators that can place some part of the citizens as vulnerable energy consumers. It seems like that most easy way is to consider as vulnerable consumers those households that have low incomes, low monthly incomes, and to secure that part of the electricity bill will be reduced and paid by the budget, the central budget of the state. My question is, what is your opinion on, or to give us an example, or how we can measure this criteria, or which criteria should we consider in order to have more detailed approach on which consumers are referred as vulnerable energy consumers? Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so thank you very much. It's a very interesting example. And I also work together with my Romanian colleagues on the Roma population. So I know the situation, and I think it's there was similarities with our Bedouin communities, which were very interesting. And I think, just for a general note, that I think Eastern Europe countries today are the most advanced in thinking about this issue of energy poverty and putting into action a more systematic dealing without, as the examples that you brought. And of course, it's related to this to the situation where, of course, you have to. There is a large amount of people that require such support, or etc. And the conditions, of course, the window conditions. Your question is maybe the most complicated question. And I do not have a very one simple answer to it. But as I said, I think it's not only related to the income. I think, as you said, like the support scheme for installation in the house is also another side of this coin of how do we deal with that. So it's not only the bills that are hard to pay, right? It's the amount of energy that is, for example, just get lost when the housing is not well enough. So maybe inside the criteria, you need to build some kind of a metrics that include both the income of the household, but also other more infrastructure-based questions. The type of energy that they can access to, their needs, the level of the house conditions, etc. And we can think about further things about it, and but this will be a very initial kind of discussion.
Do we have time for one last question? We're kind of over time, but if anybody else has one more comment or question, I think we can take it. No? Okay. Thank you very much, Naama. I
Thank
already
you.
uploaded today's lectures onto the Google Drive. And I'll see you everybody tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.